certainly NEP is a flavor of the season right now, so there's no other discussion which I personally feel is more apt than to hold a NEP discussion. I have a very esteemed panel with me today. They're already with us. In fact, I was quickly briefing, or we were having a quick chat with our panelists largely as to how will we take forward our today's discussion largely. Just to quickly outline our flow for today, which is number one, we will try to present a different perspective, or at least I would say, multifold perspective from different boards. How is a particular board looking at the NEP document? We will try to avoid few basic, I would say, rhetoric statements or cliched subject that is that's been discussed to death, if I may say, already been discussed, which is that the policy is fantastic and there will be an implementation of a sort of a problem. All of us know all that. However, let's break it down to the specifics of it. The idea of this discussion is to break down the discussion to a very micro level. And while we do that, the idea of breaking it down to the micro level is that can we understand the NEP document in view of an individual stakeholder? Example, if I'm a teacher, how or what is relevant for me within the NEP document? Or if I am the management of a school, how does the management is reading through, or how is the management perceiving this policy document? Because there's a different prism they are looking at this policy at. Okay. Obviously, we are aware of the fact that this policy is a document which is centered around our students, their well-being, their learning. So all said and done, all discussion revolves around the well-being of a student. So hence, I'm keeping them out of the discussion largely, but they are, all our discussion with even to teacher largely will lead that to student getting impacted. Okay, so the idea, as I mentioned, we have a very esteemed panel. And before we go there, I would like to firstly introduce my sponsor for this session, which is a wonderful team in HappyMongo. So you all must have possibly seen the creative which had their logo largely, but I would like to quickly share a bit about them for a very simple reason, because these are an indigenous company. I mean, there are young entrepreneurs based out of Bangalore. When I got to meet them, I think meeting would not be the right word, meet them. These days, meeting is a rarity for that matter. When I met them, or in fact, met them 45 odd days ago, I thought the sort of work they are doing, and after a lot of convincing, going back and forth with them, I thought it will be worthwhile if I can present them to the IPN fraternity in front of all of them. They've been doing a very credible job, but then, however, they are a young Indian company which is competing with the likes of Microsoft, Google, globally for that matter. So I will quickly welcome Megha from HappyMongo. She is here with me. Megha, if you can say a quick hi to all of us. And I'm sure you are muted. You can unmute yourself and be with us. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Gaurav. A warm welcome to the teaching fraternity from HappyMongo. We're very overwhelmed to have this opportunity to be on board with all you esteemed people. Thank you very much.
This is Megha, the CEO of HappyMongo. I also must be having here Shiva. You there? Are you with us? If you can unmute yourself.
You have to give access.
Yeah, no, Shiva is not here.
Shiva is there. Shiva is there.
Okay, he is named as HappyMongo.
Yeah.
Yeah, Shiva, you there?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah. Shiva is the CEO, again, very unassuming individual, but a very, very effective individual, I would say.
Thanks, Gaurav.
Shiva, good to have you with us. And I will request, there's a disturbance coming in from some end largely. I will request if you possibly mute yourself. Hold on. Bhavna ji. Yes. Finally. you put one Indian into a room with the unmute option, he'll ensure that the entire house is down. Never mind. So anyway, so Shiva, if you can quickly tell us about, obviously through that wonderful AV you have, if you can share with us largely, and I think then we are good to go with this largely, right?
Yes, yes.
Could you give me permission to play the video?
Do I have to make you a co-host? Hold on. Yeah, are you a host now?
Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Is your school prepared for the digital era? Presenting FutoLearn, a specially designed online platform that enables schools to function online as seamlessly as they do in the real world. Schools can now use FutoLearn to deliver classes as they always have, to students sitting right at home. The software is simple to use, secure, incorporates powerful video conferencing solutions, highly intuitive dashboards for students, teachers, and the principal or admin. Students can log in from their homes, and attendance is based on facial identification, foolproof. The classes enable teachers to interact with students like in the real world, with questions, quiz, assignments, and presentations. Students can access classes, related materials, and submit their assignments. Futo TeachPad, a digital whiteboard that serves the same purpose as a blackboard. It comes with a pen for teachers to write or draw illustrations that appear automatically on the student's screen, making it easy to explain concepts. Coming to the universal issue of attention, the software has an innovative eye, face, and head monitoring system that spots eye movement and student distraction. It also sends real-time alerts in case students visit entertainment or social media portals. The principal's dashboard enables the user to view all classes in progress, monitor activities,
and interact if required on specific aspects. FutoLearn can be acquired by the educational institution on an affordable subscription model and can be set up in minutes. For further details on how you could prepare your school for the next big shift in the post-COVID universe, contact us at www.futolearn.com to book a free demo. Futo.
Firstly, tell me, what do you mean by Futo? What do you mean by
So
Futo?
basically means excellence in Japanese, Gaurav.
Okay, it means excellence in Japanese. Okay, fair enough. Lovely. So what we'll do is, I have personally liked leaders. There's some facial recognition, which is true. I was listening to a lot of you asking for problem with respect to the attendance, assessment, and all that. I could see some very interesting products, I would say enablement within their offering. They do a lot of other things largely, but today is not the time largely, I would say more than this for them largely. Okay guys, so Megha and Shiva, after this session possibly we'll have a deeper understanding of this largely, and then we'll take it forward with how will our TG, which is our members, would like to take it forward with you guys. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Yeah. Okay, so good product, and more importantly, it's indigenously developed thing, which is done by an Indian company, which is my liking mostly. Okay, so coming to our discussion, ladies and gentlemen, I have, as I told you, a very esteemed panel. I will quickly take this opportunity of now introducing my panel very, very briefly, if I may say, which is, I will start with the ladies, which is Dr. Jyoti Gupta is a founder director of DPA Sahibabad, a very, very esteemed leader from the northern part of the country, if I may say. I met her? I have never met her. I have never met her, but then I have met her, and she's part of the IPN fraternity. And so to say, I have not met 99% of the principals of IPN who are part of IPN fraternity. So having said this, but then when you get to interact with the leaders, you get to know them better, and at the end of the day, she is one such individual. Whenever I have spoken to her, I think she have a very interesting perspective, and her rich experience will only make this discussion better. So welcome, Dr. Jyoti Gupta. Good to have you with us. As I mentioned, I've already made you the co-host largely. If at all you have to unmute yourself, and yeah, if you can unmute, yeah, you are very much unmuted now. In
So,
fact,
good evening to everyone.
Yeah, Mrs. Dr. Jyoti Gupta is here with us. Fantastic. Good to have you with us, ma'am. And obviously, we'll look forward to our deliberation going forward. My second panelist is I think Mrs. Seetha Murty. She is the Director of Education with the Silver Oaks Group of Schools in Southern India. She is also the President of the IB World School Association in India. And I am keen to listen to for the fact what perspective IB board is drawing from this NEP largely. And very recently, I think on this Sunday, she hosted an NEP discussion for their parents. So I would love to gather from her how that experience went through. And if I would say it's a great idea which everyone at IPN should really take forward by discussing an NEP in a very smart way with their parent, which are a key stakeholder. Mrs. Murty, I think I've unmuted you.
Thank you, Gaurav, and good evening to everyone. It's a pleasure to be on the IPN platform once again. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. I will now go to my third panelist. Again, he needs no introduction, but then for the want of, or as a largely respect to his presence, is Raghav Podar. Podar group needs again no introduction. A very, very distinguished educational group from the western part of our country, based out in Mumbai, legacy institution, and Raghav is leading the mantle of his forefathers. Obviously, he's been a very, very erudite speaker, and whenever, not only when I get to listen to him at multiple platforms, I think Raghav should be possibly truest way an educational brand ambassador for India to start with, for that matter. Raghav, over to you. Good to have you with us once again, and always a pleasure having you.
My pleasure, Gaurav. Thank you for inviting me, and love to be here with all the principals, because the principals who are passionate, that's what really matters, and it's passion and not pedigree that's going to take us forward. So namaste to everyone.
Thank you, Raghav. Thank you. Good to have you. And last but not the least, purely because he's so young, he is Roshan Gandhi, the Director of Strategy at the City Montessori School Group in Lucknow, the city where I live in, the city of Nawabs. However, Roshan is not right now in Lucknow. I'm sure he is in London purely for a reason that he got stuck there largely, and he's trying to remotely work from there. And we look forward to having him in India back. But more than that, Roshan is driving the innovation and the new practices at the CMS Group, which is obviously, again, as I said, needs no introduction. Someone who is born and brought up in the North or understands school education, CMS is a very, very pioneering brand from the northern part of the country. So I will now quickly, as I said, leaders, the idea is, in fact, before I go there, Roshan, welcome once again. Good to have you with us.
Thanks a lot, Gaurav. Thanks for having me today, and pleasure to meet everyone on the call.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Roshan. Thank you, everyone. And my sincere thank to each one of you who have joined us. So with these pleasantries aside, let's quickly get into the action, which is, let me, which I already mentioned, but let me dissect this a little more elementary level. One is that I want to hear from my esteemed panel that how do your respective board sees this NEP document. I will, at the cost of being a little cheeky, please tell us something which possibly we have not heard of. I know this is difficult to say so, but then I'll request all of you to try unravel those aspects which we possibly have not heard anywhere, largely difficult, but do make an attempt. Second is we'll dive into the stakeholder analysis, which is how an individual stakeholder, which is example, the parent, the teacher, are looking at this policy, or what is in for them in this policy, which educators on IPN or nationally can take it forward with them. As I mentioned, I will like ladies to follow, so I will request my opening remarks to come through Dr. Jyoti Gupta. Please, if you can start with a discussion. We'll try to restrict ourselves on a timeline So let me quickly give you an individual timeline, that if we can have an initial, your perspective on it, largely on 4 to 5 minutes, if I may say, right, individually. And then we will dive on to more of a Q&A part of it. And then lastly, there are a lot of members who will have questions for you individually. We will broadly be dividing this into the 3 halves of this discussion. Okay, over to you, ma'am.
Right. So thank you, Gaurav. Thank you for the introduction. And also, I think being the first speaker, it is a little difficult, but we'll try and articulate what NEP means for the CBSE schools, being the CBSE school and being always the, an intrinsic part. I don't know if you know, but I'm on the governing body of CBSE also.
Oh,
and and I am also the Chief City Coordinator for Ghaziabad for the CBSE schools. So since the time that the draft NEP came in last year, the discussions on NEP have been going on, and with our own individual sahodiyas and in our own little groups. And we were also called as a brainstorming group in CBSE when CBSE was trying to articulate what NEP means for the CBSE schools. That time, Mrs. Anita Karwal, who is now the Secretary Education, was also the CBSE chairperson. So with her, we had the brainstorming session, and we also wrote down a lot of things as to what is good for schools, what will work, what will not work, though keeping the NEP, the initial draft that had come in. So keeping the qualitative spirit in mind. So there was a lot of there were a lot of discussions. There was a lot of writing, smaller groups with CBSE where we gave in a lot of suggestions also. And I don't think there has been any policy till now which has been in a public space for as a draft for such a long time, where so much of input was taken from the stakeholders, and after that it was rolled out. So a lot of things that were worrying us at that point of time have been eliminated from the final policy. So I would not say the draft was a little bit disturbing at that point of time, but now when it has come in in a very, very refined form, and there are a lot of good things for all the schools. Now CBSE, because it was involved in drafting of the NEP, had started a lot of work that is already mentioned in the NEP since last 1 year. So whether it is qualitatively talking about, the pedagogy, the innovative pedagogies in the schools, they have already rolled out a lot of programs where they are talking about the competency-based curriculum. They are talking about the experiential learning for the children. The rote memorization, that is actually followed in the schools. I would say the assessments that trigger off the rote memorization in the schools are being there is a talk about doing away with the rote memorization. So an experiential and competency-based curriculum framework that NCERT is already working on is going to come into the schools, new form of assessments, project-based learning, also assessing the competencies and skills, and not just assessing the, the knowledge, the innovation, the creativity, everything is going to be assessed of the child. So all this is going to come into the schools, which are going to take the schools to a different qualitative level. And more than this, the stress has also been laid on the continuous professional development of the teachers. The students who are aspiring to become the teachers will now have to come in with a 4-year degree program. So, it is going to be that the children decide right in class 12 that they want to become the teachers, and 4 years they study education, and then they come along with whatever degree of specialization they want to do, and then they come into the education. It is not by accident or by chance that people are going to become teachers, that this is one part-time job so we can go and teach anything to the students, because we don't have we are not pursuing the careers that we decided in the beginning. So not just that, when the teachers come and join the schools, somehow the mindset is that we've studied as much as we wanted to. Now we are going to teach the kids, but here they have to continuously learn as well. So portals like Diksha, which have been given very the due importance, a lot of online development courses are being posted on Diksha, and the teachers can do their professional development in their own space and time. And they will have to do these professional developments if they continue to become the teachers. Then there is a lot of stress that has been given on the schools, declaring about their own details. So less regulation and more of self-audit is going to come into the system, where the schools can set the standards for themselves, and the standards that have been already set, they can match up to those standards. So concepts like hubs of learning, where the schools were put together with the lead school and some other schools together. So that means together we grow. So that's going to gain more momentum, and that's going to get more importance. Apart from that, I think the structure that has come in, that is 5+3+3+4, where the preschool has been brought into the ambit of the formal education, that is a very welcome move, because a lot of schools were opened into small houses as well, where a few children were put together, and I don't know how much stress was laid on the learning outcomes of these children, and most parents wanted to bring the children to the formal schools only after class 1, because they thought that till then they can send the children to a small neighborhood school and thereby also save some time and some fee. But now, since a lot of stress is being laid on the foundation years of the children, these children will also come into the formal schools. And again, where they have kind of also fixed the age of the students to 3 years at the entry level and 3 years before class 1, is going to bring the entire nation at one level. So states which are right now following different policies will not be following the different policies. So people who are globally moving, or they are moving from one state to another state, will not have a problem of the age of the children also. So a lot of qualitative work. Also the public-private partnerships is a welcome move, where they are allowing the partnerships between private and public organizations. That will also improve the quality of education in the country. So all in all, I would say that it is a very welcome move, and there is a lot to look forward to in terms of the qualitative work that the schools are doing. So I would like to stop here.
Surely. So I'll quickly, I'll just have one quick question with you, and I think that should be pertaining to all. Because since you're working very closely with the fold there largely, can we give a suggestion to them that example NEP can be put up on a portal, number one, or possibly can be created in a dashboard system wherein anyone having any query regarding NEP largely, or there can be a toll-free number, or etc., possibly, just as a pure user interface in terms of dismantling. If I have a query, I don't have to wait for a session of IPN or any other session to hold. Then I have to go in and get my queries answered, right? So that's one suggestion. Possibly we can give it to them through you largely, if I may say, that there can be an NEP, sort of a www.nep2020.org, and then we can have everything largely lined up there, possibly, right? So, if they already have it, possibly lack of information on my part, but then I don't see myself something of that nature happening. But through you, I will request if you can pass on this message. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, CBSE and NCRT is working at the NEP right now. And the MHRD is also going to have a conclave very soon, where they are going to decode, and the higher education had a few days back. The school education is going to have it in the coming week. And then, as I understand from them, there are going to be 14 more conclaves that they're going to, webinars that they're going to do. And post that, once they have everything, because CBSE also is right now working on the basis of the NEP. So that's why you don't see any of official statements coming out of CBSE or NCRT right now. But I will definitely take this suggestion back, and I'm sure they're going to have something like this.
Since we have the liberty of having you, I thought I should pass on this message, right? Thank you. Okay, Mrs. Murty, over to you, which is your perspective, and I would say if I can have a little more understanding with respect to how is IB board largely looking at the NEP document.
Thanks, Gaurav, and Jyoti Gupta was wonderful as always. She revealed so many insights into what NEP 2020 stands for. So let me take it a little broader. Okay, what is education, and how do we look at NEP 2020? Do we look at it as a policy, or do we look at it as a vision statement or as philosophy? So everybody in this platform right now is an educator. Everybody's experienced. Nobody needs someone to explain these things to them, because the way MHRD drafted it, it is very self-explanatory. And they've been so very accommodative that while the main policy itself is an exhaustive document, they have also developed an infographic which is so user-friendly that anyone can take from it. So what did my colleagues in the school, and some of us in the IB, what did we understand from it? This is what I should tell you. We saw the philosophy of it, because even when we take up IB accreditation, we first see the IB's mission statement. Okay, so the mission statement is about grooming lifelong learners who will make a better world. What I like about the philosophy of NEP is, I think all of us have to elevate ourselves from the implementation part of it, exams part of it, and look at what is this opportunity in our hands right now that we can make a change. That how can we build this paradigm shift? Okay. So what I liked about is that it talks about an equitable knowledge-based society. And we, all of us here right now in this platform, have that privilege of building that equity in our country. I think we had enough inequities. We are celebrating our 74th Independence Day after tomorrow, but still so many inequities. This NEP is going to address that. All of us have to find a way to work towards that. The next thing is, schools are only subsets of education systems. Schools are only platforms. Schools are not the decision makers, okay? But at the same time, schools have this immense potential to interpret the philosophy of the policy and find ways to make the philosophy happen. Policy will automatically fall into place, okay? So where am I coming from? I'm coming from in this equity part of it, this inclusion part of it, this culture of assessment part of it, culture of teaching part of it. I'm coming from there. For me, these things have been extremely, they were resonating with what we do in the IB schools and in our own school too. Because IB also talks a lot about diversity. It talks about inclusiveness. It talks about connection with the community. It talks about participation of everybody with the community, creativity. And all these have been emphatic in the NEP, okay? The culture of assessment moving away from rote learning. 2 decades we have suffered enough with rote learning. I think now we need to, from 2021, let's start another decade of grooming contributors to the society and not just consumers. NEP is giving us that privilege. How am I wanting to understand it as an IB school, as an educator, and as someone who is operating within the Indian education system? Okay, my first responsibility is to make sure that all the students who come to our school are skilled, are having the responsibility of understanding the context they live in, are having the responsibility of making sure that the goals of this NEP policy are realized through them. So that's first thing that I'd like to talk about. Then I thought I should mention that all of us have to ask this question. Are schools larger, or is a policy larger? Is a student larger? Is a teacher larger, or is a parent most important one? Though all of us, while the philosophy is the largest thing here, policy is the statement of a philosophy. A board, an IB board or a CBSE or an ICSE or a Cambridge, they're all boards of examination. Even though CBSE calls itself Board of Education, it is actually Board of Examination. Okay? So you have the philosophy, you have the policy, you have the boards, then come the schools. In all these rungs of 4 levels of this ladder of education that are available in our country right now, we are the chief actors. How we bring it up, how we take it up in our school, how we interpret and understand this, and how we want to realize it completely depends on how we look at it. Because it's said that, you see the world the way you are. Okay? So I can forever crib and complain that, oh my God, do I have to do medium of instruction in local language? But I think I would rather choose to see that there is a clause called wherever possible. IB also says, please teach the native language. Please make sure that, the local language is something that children understand. IB never says that, please teach them languages that they don't belong to. It extensively promotes language development, particularly the own language part of it. And that's something is not new to us. Skill-based teaching is not new to us. Okay, so how you develop a culture of teaching and learning in a school depends on who you are, what you want to do, why you started a school, why and how. And then you look at, does the system align with my vision? There is this thing in Hindi, neki or puch puch. Okay, when you want to do something good, the system does not stop you. Only when you want to know, how do I make this examination happen? How do I create a question paper? How do I make this textbook happen in this? Then, the system may question you. But if your larger purpose is, I want to do something good for my students. My larger purpose is, I'm grooming quality human beings for the society who can make a difference. And that's where our IB mission statement comes. I must tell you this, long back, I kept looking at the NCF document. Is there anywhere mentioned that what is the goal of India's education policy? I probably didn't look enough, but I didn't find anywhere. Okay. And that's when, to my good fortune, I attended a conference where Dr. Abdul Kalam was there way back. I asked him this question, sir, I would like to know what is the goal of education in our country. Then he asked me, what is your goal? Why are you heading a school? Okay. If you know what is your goal, that is the goal of India's education also. Okay. I simply loved it. And that is exactly what I'm seeing in NEP today. That please build equity. Please make sure that there is inclusiveness, respect diversity. Make sure Indian Constitution is respected. Make sure that, there is community participation. All these have naturally fallen into place now. Okay. As a last part, because I'm sure we're going to have discussions also, if we are going to look at the key stage assessments, like grade 3, grade 5, grade 8 assessments, we can make a big hullabaloo about it. Are these going to be another set of board exams and stuff like that? But this is something that happens in the Scandinavian countries already. And they're all very happy because the government publish what are the minimum expected learner outcomes in a grade 3 child. There is a background to it because most of the schools in our country, or maybe many of the schools in our country, you have children who don't meet the basic learner outcomes of a grade 3, grade 5, grade 8. Until they go to grade 10, you really don't know whether there is any standard of learning happening or not. These grade 3, grade 5, grade 8 key stage assessments, if you look at them as a learner outcome, as a journey of a learner, then you will love them. Otherwise, if you start blowing it out of proportion and calling them as mini board exams, then the anxiety pangs will build in the society. As school leaders, we have that responsibility as to how we talk about each point of NEP. We hype it up, then there is anxiety. We tell them this is for your good, then there is pleasure in it. And that's exactly what we did on this Sunday. We had a panel of discussion with our parent community. We shared this infographic which was circulated by the HRD ministry. And we said, you go through it. You tell us what's happening in our school and what we should work on, instead of we telling them we are doing this and we are doing that. And it was so very heartwarming that there were parents who were saying, I see this already happening in your school, and I think you need to work on this now. And that was the most, I think all the stakeholders were able to talk about what should we do as a part of education. So finally, I would like to say this part, the culture of assessment, I will emphasize the word culture. All of us have a responsibility to change it. Let's not bring the old wine into this new bottle called culture of assessment. Let's not look at another board exam pattern here, because rote learning is going to take a backseat. Content is not the king anymore. Skills and concepts are going to be the kings. And that's something we in our IB schools, and there are many progressive schools in this country, they may not be following IB, but they're also doing a wonderful job. So in schools where there is focus on skill development, approaches to learning, conceptual learning, this is a welcoming document. But in schools where this is not happening, that is where the teacher training part of NEP comes into place. Okay, and I think what they suggested, that you should club one private school with one government school, this might help in that, knowledge sharing. So for us in the IB schools, the crucial part of learning elements that are included in NEP are most welcome. We are not feeling challenged by any of them. We are welcoming them, and we are feeling that good, what we are doing is being endorsed by the NEP 2020. That's my take, Gaurav.
Lovely. I think I was reading the comments on the chat window. So people are already loving what you are saying. So I don't have to validate it any further. Thank you very much for your very, I would say, easy explanation of it, that it is in spirit the way it will matter, I would say, right? And it also makes me say that this is for the first time ever a document like of this nature of magnitude is being discussed. So I think let's make the best use of it. It's a very forward-looking document. It's a wonderful document, but at the end of the day, we'll have to make it a very, very practically implementable thing, keeping our context in mind and obviously the right spirit at the end. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mrs. Murty. And obviously, IB board perspective is a very important, because we have to learn a lot from their perspective. They are far ahead in terms of their learnings. Raghav, over to you now. I would request you to first give me a little sense of your understanding with respect to how you look at this document, because I've heard you at other junctures as well. But I would really request if you can break it down this to the very elementary level for us, that will be wonderful. Yeah.
Sure, Gaurav. Thank you. Pleasure to be here. The NEP, one has to first realize, is eventually a vision document. It is a guideline and a good policy. It's hit the right notes in most areas, but one needs to understand and outline that a lot of talk is happening about the NEP policy. I do hope that as much and even more talk and discussion and debate happens on forums like this, but also on TV forums, also in the parliament, on the implementation side. I don't want to keep going on the implementation, but the quality of that document is only as good as the quality of implementation.
Correct.
In our country, we know the real challenge is going to be the implementation. It's not about this document. I'll give you a cricketing analogy. In cricket, they say, you can have a very good team on paper, but there's no point of having that good team on paper if it can't go out on the ground and perform. Or EdTech, education technology. People talk about, we should have the best EdTech in our school. We'll have school leaders, school owners, IT departments who come up with this wonderful information technology for the school. But that quality of that technology is only as good as the quality of optimization and utilization of those resources by the teacher. If the student is not learning from there, those fancy pieces of technology become fancy pieces of furniture gathering dust. So the idea of the NEP, it's good. You have to start with the right vision document. Because if the vision document itself is regressive or is poor or is not hitting the right notes, automatically what's going to follow from that is going to be even worse, no doubt. But we all the principals out here need to put their minds to how they are going to benefit each and every student in their schools through the positives of this NEP. You asked me to crystallize this, to go in a very fundamental basic sense. Okay, I'll do that. What is the purpose of education? In its most fundamental, most basic sense, what is the purpose of education? In one word, the purpose of education is simply learning. That's all what education is about. Why should parents send their children to schools? So that they can maximize their inherent potential, excel at what they are best in. Why do parents send their children to schools today? So that they can get into the best college. What do you need to get into the best college? The highest marks. What do the marks measure? The ability of the child's memorization and regurgitation. So then what is the point of, again, running behind those marks in an era, in the 21st century? Children already have Google at their fingertips. By the time they grow up, they are going to be auto-prompted with AI and other technologies. And yet here we are running behind and valuing throughout the year. What are schools doing? Running behind marks, test, scores. Tests are meant to be diagnostic. They are meant to diagnose the strengths and the weaknesses of the child so the teacher can adjust her lesson delivery accordingly. Tests in our country have become a means to put a label on a student's forehead. So you get 98, oh, you are a genius. You get 40, oh my God, tougher. And other pathetic terms like that are used. Who has given anyone the right to say that if you cannot memorize better, that makes you unintelligent? Absolute rubbish. In today's world, we don't need that. So I'm very, very happy with the NEP in the sense, and with Anita Karwalji's statement at the press conference. She said that board exams will test only core concepts and the application of knowledge. That is one of the best things required for the 21st century, because in the 21st century, the world economy is not going to reward you for how much you know, but for what you can do with what you know, not for the amount of knowledge that you have, but for how you apply that knowledge that you have. And that is where the NEP puts the wedge in that vicious circle of running behind marks and rote and memorization and regurgitation. So the NEP has gone down to that basic fundamental sense of what learning, what the purpose of education is, learning. Let us try to focus on that rather than having a culture. Our culture of education in India revolves around testing. The purpose of education is not about testing. It isn't about conformity. It's about creativity. Now, conformity. What is conformity? That, oh, you have to have one right answer. Our exams are set like that. If you are going to train a child that, no, there is only this answer, and any other thing that you think of is wrong, you are going to put a lid on the child's curiosity. The only thing that is going to, what you want to develop in a child is the child's innate curiosity, the inherent thoughts. That's how you're going to build the 21st century citizens, not by putting a lid on their curiosity. So I'm very happy that the NEP has hit the right notes, and it is a very good vision document, a starting point, but let us remember that it is only a starting point. I think the country is going way too ahead of itself in talking about this NEP, whether it's the best NEP, it's the worst. There was actually on Twitter last week, there was a hashtag trending reject NEP. And it was so sad. It was obviously done by people with vested interests or the opposition or whatever. But the idea is, rather than focusing so much about this policy document, let us focus on how we can benefit our students. Education is a concurrent subject. What that means is states have the right to make their laws and then implement those laws in each of their states. If a state decides that they don't want to take a certain part of the policy, they're free to do that. However, like one of the previous speakers said, if you want to do something good, you don't need to wait for that law. You don't need to wait for the NEP. Take your inspiration from this NEP and see what are the things you want to do. We have already started on about 4 or 5 points, and we are going gung-ho even during this COVID time to start implementing those. Whether it's a tripartite report card. Now, people don't go into the real nitty-gritties of reading the NEP, but one of the beautiful things is the tripartite report card. What is that? The assessment is not only done by the teacher, it's done by your peers, it's done by yourself. At the beginning of the year, I want to reach XYZ by the end of the year. And how much did I achieve? And that's not something that you're going to go and show to someone, so you're going to cheat on it. The idea is it's your own self-improvement, your own self-learning. That's important. And that's what we have to focus on. So let us not make too much of a big deal about just NEP, 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 but let's talk about how we are going to deliver that inside the classroom so that the last child sitting on that last bench is benefiting. And if that child is benefiting, then this NEP is a great document. Otherwise, we're just talking in the air.
I think I'll pick up one last statement of yours, which is absolutely brilliant, that pick up the good aspect and start implementing in your own context largely. That's like absolute. Don't wait for anyone to come and say or guide. You pick up the best part and start implementing. Brilliant idea. I think your report card bit you already have implemented. That's like a litmus test for all of us. And we'll have to start doing this at our own end. Thank you, Raghav. Obviously, as I said, I had one question, but I'll keep that for last. I'll in fact now ask Roshan to step in and first help me dissect it from the perspective of how is the ICSE board, which I usually call it's my board. So how is the ICSE board seeing this largely, Roshan, and your first take at the policy? Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Gaurav, for having me. And it's been great listening to the co-panelists. I completely agree with the points raised. In particular, the point that this NEP is basically a vision document, a philosophy document. It is not really, in the traditional sense, a policy. It is a statement of directive principle. Just to quickly address your direct question about the ICSE and IC board, unfortunately, there's no inside information from my side. I wish, but actually the board has been remarkably quiet on this so far. We're waiting for a serious response. All I can say is that the board certainly has a lot of work to do. I think the NEP sets out a vision for reform that the ICSE and IC has already been, to some extent, slightly behind the CBSE on. I think even before this NEP, there was already some movement in the CBSE circles towards trying to introduce higher order thinking into the curriculum, trying to introduce analytical skills into the curriculum. So that was beginning in the CBSE, and of course this policy takes it to a much higher level, whereas that was nowhere really in the ICSE. So now they have to go even further than the CBSE would to catch up. Secondly, when we think about, for example, the change in culture in examination, shifting away from a rote learning model to a more conceptual model, understanding-based model, analytical model. That's fantastic. This is so long overdue. It was already out of date decades ago. So thank goodness that it's finally been addressed. But what does that mean in practice? I mean, for a board, one thing they have to do is obviously change the structure of their exam papers. But there's more to it than that. They have to change the structure of how the exams are marked. Exactly the same question. You could take an example. Think of a history question such as analyze the factors for the rise of Indian independence in the 1940s. Right? A basic history question. Now, questions like that already exist on our exam papers, but it's not the paper which is the issue. It is the mark scheme. The mark scheme, it'll say 10 marks. You have to make these points, and there'll be a list of points, and the examiner, as they're marking it, will take that, yes, the student has made this point 1 mark, the student has made this point 1 mark, and so the student will have had to learn a whole list of points and regurgitate them. Now, exactly the same question, analyze the factors that led to India's independence in the 1940s. It's more about the mark scheme, that there will be a rubric that will say that, okay, to get in the range of 7 to 10 marks, you need to demonstrate these skills in your answer. That's how it's done. So in practical terms now, the question is not how are we going to change the exam papers, but how are we going to actually train and develop the capacities of our teachers who will be marking the exam scripts to understand how to effectively make use of rubrics like that so that they can actually implement a less rote learning based model of examination and education. So there's a lot more to it than just changing the exam papers. It requires really deep change in the mindset at the teacher level. So that's something that's going to take time. It requires change in the curriculum throughout. ICSE prescribes a curriculum all the way back to class 5 onwards. So that needs to really be developed. They had already released a new curriculum, new syllabus just a year or two ago. And that was positive in some ways, but disappointing in other ways, in that it didn't address all of these things about moving into higher order thinking. So now they're going to have to do that again. So there's a lot of work to do. I think more broadly on the policy, great vision. I think we can all get behind it. We all agree with it. Much needed, long overdue. I mean, the question in my mind is that if you look at the underlying structure of the education system, the policy fails to address that. And what I feel is that had Indian policymakers addressed that, in the last several years or decades in a different way, we wouldn't necessarily need a policy of this nature. We wouldn't need a policy directing schools to try to think about how they impart learning in a more future-ready way if schools were already accountable. Because if schools are operating in an environment of accountability, if teachers are held accountable for the outcomes that they produce, if schools are having to compete with each other to some extent to retain parents and retain students, then schools will of their own accord have been working to improve themselves and introduce new practices and constantly working that way. So they wouldn't need to wait for some policy to come in and direct them that this is the good way of pursuing education. Rather, it would be an organic grassroots process. And that's really what effective quality policy making is about, enabling change to happen by itself from the grassroots up. Since the policy hasn't done that, it hasn't enabled that grassroots up change, the responsibility is with us. Let's not wait for the policy to come in and do it. I agree with Raghav basically, that it's up to schools to take the good elements out of the policy, to take other things as well, and just get on with working towards what is going to improve the situation in the classroom for the students. Let's not wait for policy to create an environment in which we can do that. Let's take the good ideas out of the NEP. Let's ignore the bad ideas. Let's take more good ideas from elsewhere. Let's not rely only on the NEP. And let's just get to work in our own classrooms to improve the situation. So I think that's really the overall verdict.
I was, in fact, because you represent a strong tech bent of mind, Roshan, would you like to throw some light, just an additional question if I'm saying, which is that how is the tech piece in the entire policy being looked after in terms of technology intervention largely?
Yeah, well, it's great that the policy has recognized the massive boom in ed tech and the great potential for it, and has also recognized that it's an ever-evolving thing. It's rapidly developing. We can't predict everything. Unfortunately, again, similar to the wider point which I just made, that really policy ought to be about creating the right conditions in which independent grassroots movement can flourish. Again, on technology, the policy hasn't done that. So Section 23 of the policy is specifically on the use of technology. And basically it proposes the creation of a national alliance for technology, a sort of government committee, yet another committee, which will propose to meet at tech companies and decide which ones are good and which ones are bad, and then make recommendations to state governments and to schools. And I think that's just so indicative of this very top-down, prescriptive, paternalistic model of policymaking, which has proven itself time and time again to be ineffective. And in something like tech, it's pie in the sky to imagine that they will be able to do that. We already have 4,000 education technology companies operating in India, some great, some useless, every shade in between. And how is some government committee going to be able to sit down and work them all out? What's going to happen with such a committee? It'll be yet another avenue for bureaucratic corruption to sell, education.
Exactly.
The highest bidder. So it's completely the wrong approach. What they should have done is follow the example of other high-performing, education systems and countries, and work on creating the environment in which education technology could flourish. They could make policies about helping to develop digital infrastructure or digital training or cybersecurity. They haven't done that. All of those things are omitted. And it's this top-down paternalism, which I think is very misguided.
No, I did read your piece. That's a wonderful piece in our Outlook. In fact, it just came in yesterday. I will share with everyone on the forum as well. So, okay. So we will, I had few questions, but then I'll keep them aside. Largely, I'll open the house for, though if you remember, my second half was that we have to go for a stakeholder analysis, if at all we can do that. I will quickly take up 2 points, which I think we should discuss today because we have a discussion going on. And I'll throw it to Mrs. Murty first to start with. Mrs. Murty, and then to Raghav, you, which is how does a teacher looks at this policy? If I'm a teacher in a school, what are the takeaways for me, largely?
Okay, so there's one thing that I always tell my teachers. Are you a courier of the content or are you the author of the content? Okay.
Well
and
said.
If you are the author of the content, what is it you want your learners to learn? Okay. Do you want them to learn a fact, or do you want them to learn the conceptual background of that fact? And if you want them to learn the conceptual background, which of the skills do you think would be required for them to learn it? So it is a very finely structured approach to learning. So in our IB schools, we usually say approaches to learning, okay? Not approaches to teaching. That is secondary. You know, one can be a great teacher, but if one can enable learning and empower a learner with learning, then the teacher knows exactly what he or she should be doing. And that is what I would say in this NEP. For the teachers, primarily it is like, what is it I have to do now? How is it that I'm going to change the landscape of my classroom? How is it that I'm going to, on what is my binoculars going to focus on now? Okay, because usually the binoculars are focused on the board exams. Usually they're focused on certain facts, okay? But now the teachers have to readjust their focus on what is a skill and how is that skill trained? How is that skill going to empower? Okay. The next part is, like I'll tell you, the teacher also has to know what is a thinking skill. You know, in 2009, CBSE brought in continuous comprehensive evaluation. It was one of the finest models that they brought. We were extremely happy and we were in a research mode on how do you train a teacher to understand what is a skill. Fortunately, we are in IB school, so that comes naturally to our teachers. But then it takes even a student to know, am I supposed to, like Roshan was giving an example of a question in history, okay? So how do I approach this question? If I have the knowledge of what factors came together to get Indian independence, I also have to understand, are these factors relevant in 2020? How are these factors going to change over a period of time? These are the skills. The treatment to a topic is what the teachers have to migrate to. The NEP is a migration for teachers from point A to point M, not point B.
Okay.
Okay, it's point M. It is that kind of transition and transformation that the teaching has to go through now.
No, why I say this, and I come to Raghav, to you, and then to Dr. Jyoti, and then to Roshan largely. When you read this statement, the teacher must be at the center of the fundamental reforms in the education system, looks a fantastic statement to make. But then somehow when I look at what is the budget towards a teacher training in a larger context in India, sadly, I mean, that says a very different story altogether. But then, as I said, I'm not here to make any comment. I'm largely discussing. Raghav, over to you. What is your thought when we say if a teacher has to look this through the document? Yeah.
There are 2 or 3 things here, and I want to talk about each of them. Now, when you spoke about the budget for teacher development in India, of course, it's very, very low. One of the reasons for that is because the entire GDP, percentage of GDP spent on education in our country is one of the lowest compared to other countries, even similar countries. They have outlined, the NEP has outlined that there should be 6% spend of GDP on education. Great, it's good, but that's utopian. There's no point in being so utopian. It should be aspirational, which is doable. But 6% has been recommended from Kothari Commission in 1968. So what is the point of saying the same thing again and again when it's not realistically implementable? So talking about that, one of the biggest things, and this is something I have been advocating at all forums, whether government level or at TV level or at forums like these, is we need to make teaching one of the most desirable professions of our country. The reason why Finland, I've studied this Finnish system of education for many, many years. And the one thing that separates Finland from other countries is teaching is the most valuable, desirable profession of that country, even more than a doctor or an engineer. people think, oh, it's the highest paid profession there. It's not the highest paid. In fact, as per the OECD countries, Finland is somewhere in the middle. It's not the highest paid, but it's the highest respected profession. So that is why I am advocating very strongly for, and a lot of you must have seen this in my posts or in my comments that I speak on, or the sessions that I speak at, respect your teachers. We need to bring back the Guru Deva Bhava. We need to, if you want to have the country do better, there's no better investment than in the teaching quality of the country. The progress of a country is directly proportional to the quality of its teachers. The teacher is the pivot around which the entire country will in the long term evolve. Teaching is the only profession that creates every other profession in the world. If we can't respect our teachers, we are going back regressively. And furthermore, if we want to have these teacher training programs or increase in budget of teaching education into the GDP, how will you attract the best minds of the country into the teaching profession? You go to a B.Ed course today and you ask the candidates there, why did you choose to join? Why did you choose to become a teacher? And a lot of them will say that, you know, I was told it's an easy job. I'll spend some time with some children. That's not what teaching is. You have the future of the country in your hands. That's how important it is. I call teachers miracle makers. You are creating miracles every day. That's how important we need. That's the importance we need to place on teaching as a profession. So until we do that, we are just going to be talking in the air, not really making any difference. We need to make teaching the #1 most desirable profession in our country. Get the best minds, the best talent of our country to join teaching, and let's see where this country will move ahead. It's going to go ahead beyond many other countries.
That can be, absolutely, Raghav. That can be looked at twofold. One is obviously the future teachers largely, and I'm hopeful that the sort of breed of people who will join the fold will be better. But what happens to the guys who are already in the system? As you mentioned, that obviously training is the aspect, but somehow I feel it's the most neglected aspect. Somehow you go across, that's not the top priority largely, right? How do we mainstream it largely? How do we sensitize our audience to it largely? What is your thoughts on it?
Absolutely, and through forums like this, through influencing the number of principles that you have,
right, correct.
That instead of focusing on other things or increasing, put a budget into their teaching development, CPD, certified professional development, continuous professional development. It's the most important. And please, I request all the principals watching here, don't make it just as one more thing in an Excel spreadsheet, that how many did you attend? Did you attend the Certificate of Excellence Training, Center of Excellence Training? Yes, I did it. I've got my 5 for the year, done. That's not the point. You've anyways lost the plot if that's why you're doing it. You have to give value to it. And you will not value it by checking it on an Excel spreadsheet that did she do 5 or did she do 3 or did she do 2 trainings. The question is, how did it benefit the students? Was there a change in the pedagogy, in the lesson delivery, in the learning outcome? That is how you're going to assess, not by that Excel spreadsheet.
Absolutely.
Build the incentive for teachers to do better. And the fact that we have all these principals here sitting on an evening watching this means that they're passionate. It shows that they want to learn, they want to make a difference. Let's make a difference on the shop floor. That's what we need to do. And that is when our students are going to benefit. That's when our country is going to move ahead.
So if this passionate plea from Raghav will not make you move, then nothing else will. I'm sure. Thank you for that passionate one. Absolutely. Dr. Jyoti to you, then Roshan to you. And before I go there, I'm seeing few interesting comments made. So let me step in and make this observation. Ladies and gentlemen, please understand this. We are having a very mature conversation. We are here having a conversation wherein everyone is making their individual perspective. I have chosen the leaders who have if I must say, demonstrated word or a dignified backlog to come here and speak about it. So I would request, if you have any suggestion to make it to me personally. I'll take that into consideration, right? However, and take anything in life with a pinch of salt. Don't be judgmental on anything. Okay, so that's the message loud and clear to the person who was trying to put that across. Please understand is what I'm trying to say. Dr. Jyoti, over to you, and then Roshan, over to you. Train.
Yeah, I will take it from where Raghav left. Obviously, very, very inspiring the way he spoke about the teachers and the way we should not just stick I am working with the Center of Excellence of CBSE. There are 100 people who sign up for the trainings, and there are only 40 who turn up for the trainings. So that is the kind of passion that is there amongst the existing teachers to train themselves. So it is always that why should I learn? I know it already, and why should I spend my 1 hour in the evening towards the training? So that mindset has to change. Till we change that mindset as leaders, this is not going to happen. So the continuous professional development, first of all, the need has to be, there has to be a need for the training. That has to be established first as to what is the need, what do the teachers need, and then identifying the correct mode of training for the teachers, and then training them. And then you have to measure as to what is the impact of this training in their classroom. There is no point of doing a training of the teachers if that does not filter down to the children. If the children keep learning the way they were learning traditionally, and there is no experiential learning going on in the classroom, and the classroom still looks the same, then there is no point in training. So there has to be a measurement of the learning outcomes for the teachers as well, as to how they are taking up these trainings, number one, how they are implementing it in their classrooms, then what kind of impact is it having on the children. So the impact analysis of the classroom also has to be done. There are very few people who come in with a passion into teaching. As I had mentioned earlier, either they are here by chance or they're here by accident. And if that be so, they are only looking for an easier option out. Today, if I go to my class and I ask them, how many of you want to become teachers? Not even one hand goes up. Or if amongst 40 children you are asking, what are the different professions you want to take up? They will talk about n number of careers, but they will not talk about education as a career. So that is why now when the NEP says that the teacher has to come in with a 4-year of degree course, and it is just like it's going to be like law, or it's going to be like engineering. You decide if you want to become a teacher right in the beginning, because you are the nation builder. You are shaping up the future of the country. So if you are not going to learn the new ways of pedagogy, the new ways of assessment, the new ways of transaction, then these children, we keep talking about the 21st century skills. The 21st century child is already in college. He's no more in school. So we are still debating and deciding on what the 21st century skills should be. And what should these children be doing? It is already predicted that these children are going to be changing 7 careers in their lifetime. So you have to actually engage them and ready them to be lifelong learners. If that be so, then the teachers have to first become the lifelong learners. They have to first learn in order to inculcate that skill and that competency in the children.
Well said, actually. And I said, you guys are people who are the torch bearers of the system, and as pointed out by you and in fact Raghav as well, that if we can have whatever number of leaders do we have right now, this is purely passion, because they want to be here, they want to make the difference. Otherwise, they could have chosen to be anywhere else for that matter, right? It doesn't really make sense. Thank you for your points as well, Dr. Jyoti. Roshan, how does I personally know, as I said, there's a fantastic system at the CMS level. I've seen it, known about it. What do you think is in for the teachers in this policy, number one, and how does this should be taken forward when we look at our teacher development aspect in Indian context largely?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really important question. And I'm happy to build on the great contributions from the other panelists. I really agree with what they said. I think there is this gaping hole of a need for more teacher education, better teacher training, better teacher empowerment. And I would question whether the best way to do that is to take them through longer and longer B.Ed courses and that sort of thing. I'm sure many of the principals on this call will have had the experience of interviewing teachers or candidates for teaching jobs. And there will be people who come in who seem like great potential educators, really passionate, they know their stuff, they really want to work with kids, but they don't have a piece of paper called a B.Ed. Meanwhile, the other candidate has sat in a B.Ed course for 2 years and has a certification, but can hardly string a sentence together. This is the sad reality of a lot, and I can see various people nodding their head. It's a real experience that we have. So we have to question the quality of the B.Ed courses, and we have to question whether a formal sort of degree-based training course for teaching is really the way to prepare teachers. I think what's much more important, as Raghav always says, as he said at the very beginning, it's passion, not pedigree, that will take the thing forward. When you recruit people who are passionate, and then you give them opportunities to train and develop on the job, in the classroom, and build that experience, that is the way to inculcate quality teaching. So what should teacher training look like? You know, it's not about bringing everyone together in a big hall and having some guru on the stage who talks to the teachers about how to improve their teaching. Unfortunately, so much of what we call teacher training is just that. People turning up to big courses and then marking their attendance. What the movement towards quality teacher training actually looks like in practice is that, first of all, teacher training should be designed and built around the needs of particular schools and particular teachers. Right? It should not necessarily be general teaching competencies. It should be about the particular needs of a particular school. I can give an example. In CMS itself, we would have multiple branches within one city, and they're all running on exactly the same model, same fee level, same teacher salary. They're identical schools in a way, but one is running in a very poor part of town, and one is running in a very wealthy part of town. And the demographic of students is completely different, and the needs for teacher training and how to handle the different students is fundamentally different. So bringing everyone into one hall and saying that this is the way to improve standards is not right. Schools need to sit down, they make school improvement plans, they would identify a particular thing. For example, the school team together might identify that performance in numeracy in class 4 is not as strong as we would like it to be. And they might set a goal, which is ambitious but realistic and specific. Like, we want to increase numeracy outcomes by 10% by the end of the year. And then they'll sit down and look, okay, what are the training needs that we need for that? We'll observe classes of maths teaching and see where teachers are doing well, doing less well. Peers will observe each other and understand each other's practice. They will discuss, they will share ideas, and then they will engage in action research. So in their own classroom, they'll try some new method that should hopefully lead to an improvement. And then they will discuss and work out how well that has gone. And the evaluation of impact will be factored in from the very beginning. So before even setting out on one of these action research cycles or training, you need to look and, okay, what is the outcome that we want to achieve by this, and how will we measure it? And outcomes, of course, the most basic form is some tangible improvement in exam results, but you can measure outcomes in plenty of different ways related to the well-being of children, the happiness of children, the participation of children, all of these things which are equally important outcomes for a school. And there are ways of gauging and measuring these things with reasonable objectivity so that the impact of an action research-based training program can be actually evaluated meaningfully. And that will improve the quality of teaching for the setting in which it needs to be improved with the particular requirements of that place. So that's really the direction of travel in which teacher training needs to go, not extending the length of B.Ed courses.
Absolutely. In fact, why I brought that up largely because I may end up doing a session picking up your best resources. In fact, Raghav, yours, Roshan, yours, Dr. Jyoti, yours, and in fact, even Mrs. Murty's, because there are certain best practices which are happening at your level, which I really want through the IPN, if we can take it forward to the larger canvas, I think it will help. And the moment, I think Roshan said action research, there's a resonation which happens with the audience, and there's understand that, okay, they can also think on those lines for that matter. So these are the sort of things. I know we are hard pressed for time. We may not be able to cover all this largely in detail, but then I should be thanking all of you that you had to condense your thoughts to a level that it's short, crisp, and precise, Thank you very much. So I will now open up the house for Q&A largely, and then I think we should have a lot of questions and some difficult one as well. So let's go to the questions. Dr. Rama, and as I said, you guys can have a quick show of hand, then I'll help you unmute yourself, and then you can ask the question, please. Okay, Dr. Rama, if you can unmute yourself, I think you have a question.
Yes, good evening, Gaurav, and good evening, everyone. And first of all, I congratulate you for one more successful session. And it's always a learning, listening all the speakers.
Thank you.
So I just want to talk about one thing. As vocational courses will be introduced from class 6th now. So how are we going to cater the teachers? Because for every vocational course, you need to cater teachers as well. So if the choice is open for the students, and it depends on the number of students who will be opting for the courses as per their skills and as per their interest. So how are we going to address this problem? Because, for example, if in one class of 40, only 2 students opt for same vocational course, then how are we going to address this? Number one. Number two, I would like any of the speakers to address on the national professional standards for teachers. That what is it exactly telling us how to move with it? Number three is like I think Raghav and
let's stick to 2 of them.
Okay.
I'm kidding. You can ask the third one. Let them answer the first 2 first. Okay.
So third one is not a question. Basically, I literally actually wanted to go with the thing what Mr. Gandhi and Raghav both they addressed.
Okay.
The teachers are being trained at present also.
Okay.
The training is happening, be it a CBSE, be it a ICSE, or be it any board. Training is happening. So why is it that the training impact is seen for a month, week, or so? So actually, Seetha ma'am also addressed the thing. If we ask students of 40 children, how many of you want to be teachers? None of the hand goes up. Why is it happening and how it can be addressed? These are the main questions, because one time will come, B.Ed is already 4 years, then, teaching was taken as the easiest job. So this will be going, where are we going to find teachers from?
So I'd like to quickly, address at least some of the questions. There are quite a few questions hidden in those 3, but I'll address some of them. Talking about how do we make teaching a more desirable profession. One is, of course, monetary, but second is respect. We need to make our teachers heroes. They say not all superheroes wear capes. Teachers are the superheroes that don't wear capes, but they are superheroes. So from every platform that you can, as a principal, as education leader, thought leaders like us can, we have to extol the value of teachers in our lives. That is how it's going to become more desirable. Why does a student want to become the next Akshay Kumar, or the next Sachin Tendulkar, the next Virat Kohli, or the next astronaut, the next pilot? Why does a student want to choose these kind of careers when you ask them in a class? Because it's cool. It's so desirable. We have to make teachers that cool, that desirable, that people want to choose those professions. So that is the question of that.
If I may quickly butt in, Raghav, not only the student, but I think even the parents do not want them to become a teacher, first of all, to start with. I mean, the fact is, does that really go into the ecosystem? Over to you.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me come with one more aspect. See, now the other option with NEP 2020 is that private schools will be, adapting some of the government school. All the NEP has to go hand in hand with both public and private sector. Now, if we talk about the financial emoluments, will all these private schools be able to give the financial emoluments away? Government is giving? So if you want to compare the work, the private teacher is working even at 10,000 a month, whereas the same teacher working in a government school is getting 70,000 for a month, and the outcome result can be seen. there is no learning in government schools or in other schools. The learning is happening here. So that is one of the main reasons that that the present generation don't want to be teachers.
So that's what we have to make teaching a desirable profession. We have to want to make teachers cool. They have to be heroes. They have to be superheroes, and we have to bring them up. Education leaders like you, principals, we have to bring up our teachers and make them heroes. We have to make them gurus and not say that our teacher hai to kya baat hai. Usme koi badi baat nahi hai.
Raghav, you talked about the GDP. See, 6% increase kar rahe hai, so it's going to be 6%. But then, do we really invest these things in proper things?
6% is not going to really happen. Even 4.4%, which is today, it doesn't actually get spent. What the amount gets spent is far lower than that. And even what gets spent, how much of it reaches the teacher, we all know what gets pilfered in between.
That is where I wanted to come. That is where I wanted to come.
But that's not a question of making teaching more desirable. That's a question of corruption. That's a question of pilferage throughout the system, which is a systemic thing in our country, which we have to anyways.
How do we expect change in these government sectors then? Because they need to invest in the infrastructure. If Icsc is to be started and implemented, where is the infrastructure? Where is the training of the Anganwadi workers? Where is the training of the teachers?
Dr. Rama, I'll just have to interject. This is a fantastic discussion. We'll keep it for some other day in terms of very detailed one. So let him first answer your initial 2 questions, and then we'll come to that. Okay.
And the initial question about for the vocational courses, it's very good that vocational is going to be there. But yes, if you're right, if there are only 2 students who choose for a particular vocation, you don't have to run that. It's not like if there are 40 children and 40 children want a separate vocation, you have to have 1 teacher for each. It's not like that. You have the choice to select which vocations that you're going to give to your school, which will be the 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 most popular ones. It's up to the school. It's not like every single vocation under the sun you have to provide. That's not the way it would work. And unless somebody else also takes some questions, because please
I will come in here, Raghav, just an extension of what you are saying. All the vocational subjects that have been given, at least by CBSE, I don't know about the other boards. They are the subjects that can be taken up just by the teachers who are already into the system. For example, the medical vocational subjects can be taken up by the biology teachers or by the science teachers. Media, etc. can be taken up by the English teachers. The library and courses like that can be taken up by the librarians of the school. So there are a lot of vocational subjects which can be taken up by the teachers who are existing into the schools. And right now also, when we are doing the vocational subjects in classes 9, 10th, 11th, 12th, there are a lot of teachers who have been trained. For example, when geospatial came in, it was a lot of geography teachers and a lot of IT teachers who were trained by Rolta to take up this subject. Similarly, earlier when library sciences came in 9, 10th, 11th, 12th also, that time also the librarians were trained to take these courses. So there are many such courses that are already given as the vocational subjects. You can look within your system if there are any teachers who can take up these subjects. I have followed that in my schools and very, very successfully. For example, banking and insurance were taken up by the accounts teachers, and they were taken up very well. Retailing can be taken up by the commerce teachers. So a lot of these vocational subjects can be taken up by the existing teachers only.
Thank you so much, Jyoti ma'am. Thank you so much. But it's about the urban areas, and it's about the you talked about some courses which are usually taken in most of the schools. Now, what about a school in rural area where a child opts for carpentry, where a child opts for electrician's course, where a child opts for some mason course? Where are we going to get the experts? Because if you get a regular carpenter for demonstrating the skills, he will give us this old technique what he has been using since 40 years. Whereas the things are changed.
I understood your question. In that case, if as hubs of learning schools, each of you schools can decide about one particular course that you want to give as a school, then you can always exchange the infrastructures. There is a paper that we wrote and published for CBSE here, where the Sahodya schools and the hubs of learning schools, they can come together to organize the hubs of excellence. So if suppose you take up as a school the electrician's course, there is another school which is in the neighborhood which can take up the plumbing course. There is a third school which can take up something else. So on Saturdays, you can do the exchange of either the students or you can do the exchange of the teachers. So the teachers can be there in a common pool and all of you can be sharing the teachers. That is why the concept of hubs of learning is there.
And the idea really is, of course, there are going to be problems. There's nobody denying that there are going to be problems of rural and urban. And this is not a panacea, one size fits all that's going to solve it. But the idea here is to be able to find solutions, as many solutions as we can. It doesn't mean that the last kid in last village is going to get that kind of quality of what he gets in, say, Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, Pune. But whatever we can do to try to help, we must. Each one of us has that opportunity.
That's true. That's true. I totally agree. I totally agree there. But I was just talking about, see, these things are going to happen. And of course, we have to concentrate on what can be done, not what is to be done, what can't be done.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Any other questions? Because I think Dr. Rama took all the time for questions, I would say. She had a lot list of questions. No, I'm just kidding. Any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Otherwise, we call it a day. I'm sure this has been okay, there is a lot of show of hands, but then these are so, okay, Chitrakala ji. Please go ahead, Chitrakala ji.
Good evening to all of you. My question is to Mr. Raghav Podar. This is about the language, that we are talking about. We have to teach the children through mother tongue. My question is, I can say there's no city where you'll have the same, the regional language children who are studying in the school. It will be different children from different states who migrate or who come here to work, and they'll be putting them in different schools. Will it be the regional language or will it be the mother tongue? I want an answer for this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that question. And I'm so happy that you asked it, because I did a webinar last week just on the topic of this language clause in the NEP. Now, language needs to be a bridge, not a barrier. One has to understand that the critical phase in this NEP is wherever possible. This leaves it subjective. And of course, no state is going to get rid of, say, English medium schools or whatever the state school, state language school is. It isn't in the interest of the state or even in the law of the lawmakers, whose large populace, whose large vote bank is English speaking or is aspirational for English speaking. The politicians, the lawmakers, they themselves, their children, their grandchildren, all go to the fanciest English medium schools. Now, banning English medium as an instruction and going just to state is like committing harakiri. And thus, even the education minister, Pokhriyal ji, he has clarified this in an interview to Times of India, that we want to promote multilingualism, which is very good. He has also clarified that the 2-language plus English is part of the 3-language policy. So English medium schools do not have a thing to worry that we are going to be a thing of the past. Furthermore, Tamil Nadu has already gone ahead and issued a statement saying that we don't care what the NEP says, we are not going with the 3-language policy. It's the first time probably the chief minister and the opposition leader have given a joint statement to say we are not going to agree to this 3-language policy. For us, it's going to be Tamil and English. We are not going to have a 3rd language as compulsory. So the focus on multilingualism is extremely, extremely important, because it's a great value add for us as Indians. Today as Indians, we have our regional language, our mother tongue, and a 3rd language that most of us are fluent in. And that gives us great advantages than other countries. It's known, multilingualism is known to have major cognitive benefits. It even drastically reduces the chances of Alzheimer's disease and other neurological disorders later in life. So you think about people in US, UK, Australia, they all speak one language, English. And even there, the countries are really trying to push multilingualism through learning Spanish, French, Mandarin, and all of that. So the part of the brain that's responsible for language development, it's known as the Broca's area. That part, the Broca's area, is the fastest growing in children till the age of 8. If you and I try to learn a new language, let's say we decide we're going to learn Greek or Russian, it's going to be much more difficult for you or me as compared to a child who is below the age of 8 years. Why? Because it's part of the human evolutionary process that we need to communicate with language. And that is why the Broca's area, the part of the brain responsible for language development, is growing the fastest till the age of 8. So one needs to understand that let us not get too caught up in this debate of regional language, mother tongue, or only English medium. Schools will have the choice of what medium they want to run, and students will have the choice of whether they want to go to a Hindi medium, a Marathi medium, English medium, Malayali medium, or whatever the state language is. The choice of students is not going to be taken away through this NEP.
Thank you so much.
I hope that answered your questions, ma'am. Yeah. Dr. Arshia Arjun, your question. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, ma'am. Yeah, if not, we go to the next one. Any other question? Or this was well explained? I think so, right? Yeah.
Hello, hello, Mr. Gaurav.
Yeah, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Firstly, I would like to thank for this opportunity that you've provided.
You just muted yourself again, ma'am. Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah,
please.
Firstly, I would like to thank you for facilitating this event with so
Most
many
welcome.
different, curriculums and boards under one roof. I had one question or one worry is like, is it going to raise a question about the sustainability or existence of different Indian and international boards like CBSE, IGCSE, IB, and ICSE? Will it raise a question of their existence, or will they still be existing? Because it's all speaking about one thing all over the country.
Okay. So if Gaurav, I think there is an answer to your question in the NEP itself. There is a part where they're going to work on the equivalence of academic standards in learners' attainment. So that is going to be published, and even schools will be publishing their own standards or learner outcomes that they're working on. So that equivalence of academic standards is going to take care of the crevices or the gaps between each board. As it is in India, we already have that AIU, Association of Indian Universities, where there is some amount of equivalence that's being done. But I think this new body will help in bringing that alignment of equivalence of learner outcomes between different boards. I hope that answers your question, Dr. Ashra.
I'd like to just quickly add on to what Ms. Murty said. Whether the sustainability of the different board schools will exist after the NEP, we have to understand where do these different boards get their importance from the demand. So if there's a demand for it, if there's a demand of students who want an IB or CBSE or an ICSE or a state board, that is what's going to drive it, not the fact that the NEP is making certain policies. NEP is not against any board. It's pro all boards in that sense. It's just pro education. So I don't think the NEP is going to in any way affect the sustainability of any of the boards of schools. It's the demand for those kind of schools. It's the demand for those kind of boards. If they are progressive enough, if they are able to be agile, be nimble, be flexible, be adaptable to change. And that is what's going to determine those boards' sustainability or not.
Yes.
Any Sajid? Your question?
Hi, good evening. Good evening, Mr. Gaurav, and I'm really pleased to be here. So my question is to Mr. Roshan Gandhi, and my question is, what is the impact of the NEP on foreign languages like Spanish and French being offered in ICSE schools as a second language?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, it's not a direct cause and effect as such. It's more that the NEP, as it's just been explained, has encouraged an environment in which there's more emphasis given to language training, has understood the importance of that for a child's development. I think in terms of both, just as Raghav said, in terms of doing that at a young age, giving the opportunity while the mind is still agile, but also I think a wider pedagogical point that actually language development is inherently good for a child's cognitive development. There's a lot of evidence to suggest that. But when it comes to Spanish, French, that's going to be up to schools. It's going to be up to being able to find sufficient teachers in India, because obviously, for certain languages, the availability of teachers is much greater in India than for other languages. And I think that's going to be a big challenge. So if the demand is there amongst parents and students, then of course it'll come up. The demand, what is it fueled by? It tends to be fueled by the opportunities that arise by learning those languages, right? So Spanish and French, it's questionable how great the opportunities are. Whereas say German, because Germany has opened its doors to pretty much free education, free higher education for Indian citizens. Therefore, there's a lot of demand for German education. So hopefully this will create the space for a lot more German teaching to come up. And hopefully the supply and demand will meet each other. So if in India, we are able to teach more and more in other languages like Spanish and French and Japanese as a second language, then also the other way around, in those countries might start trying to attract Indians. So that'll be fueled by the supply and demand. The NEP simply creates that provision for bringing in the second language, which I think is a really good thing. And let's just hope that the NEP's motivation in bringing that in is definitely for the cognitive development of students and for the opportunity to learn those languages, and is not, as some critics have alleged, a sort of underhand attempt to peddle a particular Indian nationalist ideology. I don't think it's that. It doesn't seem to be that way. But a lot of critics have raised that point. So let's make sure that it doesn't turn out to be that way.
Okay, we'll take up the last question, which is Principal Dalbir ji. Go ahead. You'll be the last question and we'll close it for the day.
Thank you, Mr. Raghav. Actually, you have been setting bar higher with every subsequent these webinars, and see, it's a movement that has started, and a lot of people have now started doing the same thing. I would like to thank you again, like bringing so much knowledge here and like to benefit us, every one of us.
Most welcome,
one
sir.
question that I would like to ask, like it has already been answered partially, about teacher training. Like we have been saying that a teacher is pivotal to everything which is going to happen for this new educational policy, or whatever policy we are going to implement. Now, for new teachers, they have got this extension in the course, like they have made it 4 years course. What about the teachers who are already teaching, who are in the schools? Have they got anything for that in this policy? Is there any mention of that, like how we are going to train them, how we are going to upgrade them, so that they can match up with the requirements of this policy?
Dr. Joshi, Dr. Jyoti, would you like to answer that? Or Raghav, because I think...
Sure. I don't think you need to wait for the policy to tell you how to train the existing teachers. I mean, certified professional, continuous professional development is something that should be anyways a part. I mean, as a principal, you're already a school leader. You know what happens, what you go through, how you can improve your teachers to the best level. So I don't think one needs to wait for the national education policy to tell us that. But if one does want guidance from somewhere, there's so much of wonderful literature available online. Whether you want to see it from Harvard, you want to see it from Stanford, you want to see it from Oxford, you'll be able to find this kind of stuff online. You can find specific teacher training modules also, even if you don't want to develop your own. You can just copy paste that and show them that also. Some of them are chargeable, some of them are free. Udemy is there, Coursera is there. There's so many wonderful available platforms for you to be able to bring your teachers up to the best versions of themselves without having to wait for the NEP to tell us that.
Thank you. Thank you. Answering,
I would also like to mention the Diksha platform here. The Diksha platform is a very powerful platform, and if yours is a CBSE school, then I know for sure. And there are some states also which have put up their training modules online on Diksha. So for example, experiential learning module is there on Diksha. So you can ask all your teachers to go and register on Diksha and take the module on experiential learning. It is absolutely free of cost. And the certificate, the moment they finish their training, a certificate by CBSE is also issued. So Diksha as a platform is a very, very powerful platform, and a lot that is mentioned in NEP regarding the training of teachers is all going to come on Diksha. So it is a platform for the students for self-learning. It is a platform for teachers. There is a lot of material which is available there. So apart from all these sites like Coursera, etc., we can have some courses from Diksha as well.
Thank you, Dr. Jyoti. And you know that when we started CCE and how we trained our teachers for many years, and you know, this NEP, it has come up with some specific requirements as far as teachers are concerned. I'm talking about that. I know about all these platforms, as you know that I'm from CBSE school. So a lot of things are available, and as Raghav was saying, like internationally also on website and everywhere. But we know that story about CCE. So like there will be some specific requirements as about report cards and everything else. I think we need to train our teachers in that area.
Yeah.
That's what
So
I was asking.
So Center of Excellence is going to do this.
Yeah.
And she is just, Dr. Jyoti is only taking up the questions on behalf of, she is not the CBSE, by the way.
She is leading, she is leading this chain. I have seen her in that CBSE.
Though I see a very seamless transition to she going to CBSE very soon, I would say. Deep Khareji, your question is a final question and then we'll close this.
Thank you, Mr. Gaurav. Keep it up, what all is going on. I have just very simple question, and Mr. Raghav put it earlier also in the perspective that the whole country is going to look forward for the assessment. And as long as we keep on assessing people on the basis of written tests, that is based mostly on the knowledge and understanding, what about competencies? What is the method by virtue of which anyone across the country can be measured about its competencies? You know, we have done CC and we have stopped it anyway. We gave a chance to everybody to talk about the competencies, and we have seen what has happened. Now, such a big thing which is coming up, my only worry, as he said very rightly, that as long as we are looking forward for passing exams, and these exams are going to be based on only your writing. I know how ASL is done in this country. We all know how the practicals are done in this country. Everybody will get full marks. So from where can we trust teachers, and can we train them good enough, and we have a solid methodology to check the competencies? Then only I think we are going to get something out of it. Again, otherwise there will be great policies but in the classrooms, nothing will change. The teacher and child will prepare for exam, and all parties will be happy. The parent, the management, and the teacher. That's what my question to anyone. Ma'am Seetha Murty, I think, is the most apt person to talk about it. Mr. Raghav or anyone can answer this. Do we have any plan? Ma'am Seetha Murty, good evening. Long time.
Good evening to you. I was, you know, when I was reading the policy, I was also looking keenly about, are they going to announce what are the expected competencies at each grade level? If you see, an NCF 2005 also has that a 6-year-old should be knowing this conceptually. A 10-year-old should be knowing this conceptually. Honestly speaking, no B.Ed college teaches NCF 2005 till now. I have been to RIEs also, and this is my question. So probably in this 4 years teacher training, we will be having this part, and I'm sure, I think Ministry of Education, Jyoti might be able to clarify that, will be publishing that what are the expected learner outcomes, because it is against those that the key stage assessments are going to be done, right? So,
right.
Yeah, but then, you know, as you said rightly, the greatest concern comes from how does the teacher understand it, translate it, realize it, and then enable and empower the student. But that's why we are all here. And that's why we are all.
Ma'am, I fully agree with you. I did my B.Ed M.Ed from RIE only, so it brings me great memories, and I know what kind of B.Ed I have done.
Yeah.
The problem which I foresee is that even if the learning outcomes has been laid down by NCERT for the last 60 years, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But is there any follow-up at any level where a child who is getting 99% marks in class 6th is justifiable?
No,
that is where my problem personally is. We all are busy. Yeah.
Yes. I think individually schools take it up, if not the board or
agreed.
The
then, but in the race of you know, getting the school better and pleasing parents and giving them good marks, I think the whole idea that doesn't go with that momentum as well as the spirit as such.
Yeah.
I would like to put across one thing. The CBSE has been telling that we'll be moving from rote learned question to concept based questions. And this year also, except in physics exam, they could only, you know, gather courage to do something, hardly 10-15%, and again they went down to same age-old questions, you cram and pass. And my average of the school is 90.5, and I'm very unhappy about it, to be very, very frank with you. That's how it is.
Yes.
Okay, so this is, I think, something I think Mr. Gaurav can take this in next webinar, that how to assess
exactly. I think
otherwise it won't change. Yes, sir.
आज के लिए जो ट्रेनर, आज हमारे जो 4 हमारे डिस्टिंग्विश्ड गेस्ट हैं वो भी थक गए मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है, और then having said this मैं थक गया हूँ, to be very honest with you. So thank you very much all of you who had the time. In fact, we still have quite a good number of people joining us, but having said this, thank you to each of my speakers. Dr. Jyoti, thank you very much. And before you go to CBSE, you have to stick to IPN, number 1. And number 2, Raghav, obviously as erudite always, if I may say, and I think your fan following in India is, you should create a Raghav fan page as well for that matter. But having said this, I truly mean it when I say this. It's a wonderful sort of a thought process you hold. Mrs. Murty, obviously is my go-to person at IPN whenever I have to do anything, and so thank you very much. You are a home team, if I may say. And Roshan is someone who I'm now trying to build an understanding of, because of purely, if I may say, the sort of age bracket we come from, and we connect at a age level as well. So thank you very much, all of you. Thank you, each one of you who have joined in. Thank you for your lovely question. Deep Khare ji, I'm sure आपको इन्वॉल्व करके कहीं ना कहीं एक डिस्कशन करना है. So I'm actually leaving this discussion with giving the onus to you that let's drive a discussion which will be far more meaningful, if I may say. Thank you very much, all of you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you, Dr. Jyoti.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Gaurav.
Thank you, Roshan.